Hi everybody, I'm Bill Sanders and this is Watch Art Sci, the art and science of watch collection. Today what I want to talk about are a set of watches that are mostly from the early 2000s, the late 90s. And these are by and large by top watchmakers. And they, for a period, they had their own company and they were named after themselves. And they made some really good watches. Now, for a long time, these watches were just a bargain. And more recently, I've been watching them go up, but you still can find some great deals. And so let's talk about them. And without further ado, now, the first one is Roger Dubuis. And Roger Dubuis has a number of different models, but there's sort of a one generic one I really like. It has an unusual looking case, sort of a wavy looking kind of case, and it's called a SYMPATHIE. Now, if you go and you look online at places like Chrono24, eBay, or anywhere really, and some of them are very, very small. I mean by small in the 22 millimeter range, which for women may be just right. Women can find great deals on watches, by the way. So here are a couple. One of them is just a time-only watch, the one on the right. I really like the looks of it, the design and everything. And the one on the left is a chronograph. And so you can find them a lot of different configurations. Okay, so those are two that you might be able to find a good buy on. Now, if you can't stand the looks of the case or the dial, keep in mind at least they generally have some really excellent movements in them by Roger Dubuis. Now, here's one. There's actually two different model names here, but I think the watches are essentially the same. They're type of easy diver. Now, the one on the left, they call the Excalibur, or that type of Roger Dubuis model. And the Excaliburs have these Roman numerals around someplace on them. But the rest of the watch looks pretty much like an easy diver. And it's got a rubber strap and everything else about it, and it has the shape of it. Now, one of the things, I have the other one. This is my Easy Diver, and this watch is I just love it. It has I think it's an RD14 movement, and this is one of the things about Roger Dubuis watches that I like, is that they do have true movement, not just in-house, but you know exactly who the designer was, and in this case it's Roger Dubuis. Also too, most of these, mine does, has a Geneva seal, so that's pretty nice. And the prices on these, like I said, on some of these other ones, have just been really fabulous. I'd rather have one of these than just about any other sports watch. This is about my only sports watch. I'm really not into sport watches, but this one is one I really like. I enjoy wearing it. It's very accurate. Time only, a lot of fun. They have these also. You can get them in chronographs and different kinds of divers and so forth. Okay, this next one is a sort of considered well, I don't know, it's another Excalibur. It doesn't quite have that easy diver look to it. It does have three lugs on the bottom and the top. The Excalibur, a lot of the Excaliburs are on these sort of a rectangular shaped watch. They're not, some might even be tonneau, and there are a lot of them on that, but they tended to be, I don't know, they just didn't quite look as cool, I didn't think, but you might like them. So if you go looking for these, for Excaliburs, they have, the range is tremendous, really, from a round wristwatch to some squares and some different funny shapes on those. Now, this next one, the one to the right, is called the La Monegasque. La Monegasque is a, I don't know, to me it's sort of like the everyday watch, and I love that watch, and this is one I'm very tempted by. This particular one, I think, is from a little later era, more like 2010 and on from there. And I saw a new one for about 13,000, but then I saw one that was just in perfect shape for less than half of that. So you can find some really good ones, good deals, and they have in-house Roger Dubuis movements on them. So to me, this is a really neat one, and one that I could easily be tempted to get. Now, when you're looking at the movements, we all are aware that a lot of them have movements that sound like they're made by the manufacturer or by the watchmaker. One thing I found, this is with Roger Dubuis, first of all, most of the movements are manufactured by Roger Dubuis. The one I have there in the middle, you can see it, RD14, self-winding, time only. That's what this guy is. But look at how many variants there are. There's the RD 1429, the 1439, 47, 48. This one, it was launched in 2006. Okay, and so this is a neat movement. It really is. I really like it. But then they have all kinds of other ones that are manual and self-winding. By the way, on this, the rotor on this, you got a nice 22 karat gold rotor with it instead of, some of them have steel or aluminum or whatever they're made of. Now there's also some of the watches, like for example, the RD56. It's an in-house modification. This one, the RD56, for example, is a manual wound modified Lamania 2310, and it has a bunch of variants on there. Same with the RD57, except it's self-winding, again, Lamania. And so this is, there are very few that are not in-house, but some of them are what you might call, they're sort of modified of a very good movement. Now, this next set of watches I think are really worth looking at are the ones by Daniel Roth. Now, Daniel Roth had his own company, I think from about, the late 90s to somewhere in the early 2000s, and he made a whole bunch of them, and then he was bought by Bulgari, and so that's another story. But in the meantime, during this period, in the early 2000s, perhaps late 90s, there was a period there where you could get a Daniel Roth watch. And Daniel Roth is really one of the tip-top watchmakers around. Now, the thing of it is that not all of the movements are strictly Daniel Roth. They're DR labeled. For example, this one has, I got it written down here. This one is called the DR in here. This is called the Metropolitan 24 Cities. It has a DR 700/20. It's got a Lamania base with an ETA 2892 regulator. So if you look at this thing and you can't see it, you have to take the back off. And you see the regulator, because what I did when I got it, I took the back off and took a picture of the movement. And I was looking at the regulator saying, my God, it's an ETA. Well, but the rest of it didn't look like an ETA, and there's usually this little thing in there. You can, if a movement is ETA, there's a little telltale ETA logo. This didn't have it. So it's something that it's like, okay, yeah, it is Daniel Roth, but it's a modified movement somehow. And this one was doubly modified. Now, in terms of looking at the watches here, The watch on the right is the Metropolitan. That's this one, and it's much more than you think. All right. Right at 10 o'clock, off in the margin, there's a little W, and at 8 o'clock, there's a little S. That's for spring and winter, and what it's for, that if the country that you're matched with, every country or city really, 24 of them, is matched with another city. For example, New York is matched with Bangkok, and if one of them changes and they're no longer on daylight savings time, some countries don't use, some places don't, this one can tell the difference. So I thought, whoa, that's sort of cool. Anyway, that's another one. The one that I really like is the retrograde. And the retrogrades, by the way, too, the prices of these have just been going up and up and up, and that's sort of disappointing. Unless you find a really good deal, I'd wait until things cool off, because unless you could, like I said, unless you can find a good buy on these things. The one I really like is retrograde. They have something unique that Roth did for them, for the retrograde to work as such. Now, a couple I really like is first of all, the one on the left is called the Papillon. And you can sort of get an idea of why it's called the Papillon by the way it tells time and how it's set up. The problem with the Papillon, most of these things are really expensive. And I was this close to getting one, and it was one of those weird things because of Chrono 24 piled so much stuff on top of the thing I was trying to buy from Japan in terms of the conversion and everything else. I lost it, and so I thought, whoa. I lost the buy. I didn't lose the watch, but it's one, and then I went back, and the price has already gone up. So I sort of gave up on it. But if you find a good deal on a Papillon, man, be a nice one to have. Now, the one next to it is the Academy ATHYS 2. Now, this is really a three-hander is all, but it's such a cool three-hander that I really like it. The ATHYS 2 is over at 9 o'clock. You can see a hand that's really three hands. And then you have three tracks to the right. And what happens is that the smallest hand, well, let's see, we'll start with the longest hand, starts with 0, and then it goes from 0 to 20. And by that time, the middle-sized hand comes around, and it's on the second track to go from 20 to 40. And then finally, on the last track, it goes from 40 to 60. And so you get a real show with this. So you got this second hand going around with, and again, it's just a standard second hand. And the thing about it is that, well, the hand isn't, because it's got three hands in one on the second dial. That subdial, all it is that they just put in three tracks with three different lengths. There's another company that does a lot of that I think is really cool. And again, like I said, this is just sort of a plain vanilla movement, three-hander movement that does that. Now, this last one, these two are more available. The chronograph, there are two different kinds of chronographs. One chronograph is very expensive, and it has something magical about it. I'm not sure what it is. It's a Daniel Roth magic chronograph. But then there's what I call the plain vanilla chronograph, and it's called the DR 400 movement, which is really the El Primero 400. And that's fine with me, because I had to have a chronograph, otherwise no one would talk to me. So I got this one. And mainly because I liked, the two things I liked about it. One, I liked the Daniel Roth, sort of the overall design and feel. And second of all, I like the El Primero. I'm also one of those people who loves the date down at 4:30, and it's got that. This is a neat watch, and again, like all of these other things, starting to disappear with little I'm glad I got mine ahead of time. Now the final one is just called the small seconds. And the small seconds is the most affordable. And so you can go, hunting around and you might be able to find a small second. One thing you have to watch out for on these watches, and most of them, is that some of them are very small, okay? Now this one has got, nice width this way, but here it's like 30 something. But in terms of it, looking okay, it looks like a natural watch, mainly because it's got a good length to it. And again, these are ones that you can have a top designer and for a price that you might be able to afford. Now, the final ones I'm going to talk about are not by a designer, but by a company that always gets the best designers. This is Van Cleef and Arpels. Here are two right here. One is the World Time with gold, and it's about 36 millimeters, I think, which is, a lot of people would be a little too small. But these are very well priced still. I was looking at them, and they're overlooked. They have bar lugs on the top and the bottom, and I can testify bar lugs are fine. In fact, this one is one of the newer Van Cleef and Arpels, and it has bar lugs too. They're fine. A lot of people associate them with the early time when they started putting straps on pocket watches, but they worked then and they work now. The one to the right is one that the rancher found. What a great watch! This is a dual time calendar watch with a Jaeger-LeCoultre movement, and it's a very cool watch. And it's reasonably priced. These things are all under 5,000 or so. So this is something that, then you get a watch with a very nice movement in it. Now, the final two are called the Pierre Arpels. Now, Pierre Arpels was one of the guys working at one of the namesakes for Van Cleef and Arpels. And he was sort of like... He was out selling jewelry, and he decided that he needed a men's watch, and so he designed one, and so they call it the Pierre Arpels gentleman's watch. And that was in 1947, and then they started mass producing them, I think, about 1960. But one of the things you have to watch out for, they're awfully small. They can be very small. So if you're looking at these, you can find a really good buy on one. Check the size. For women, even though they're labeled as a men's watch, these are watches that could be very nice to have because the size is right. They're designed by really historically a top designer in Pierre Arpels. The one to the right is simply the newer version of it, and it's 38 millimeters, I think. It's a good size, and it retains the basic design that Pierre Arpels had for a man's watch. It has time only, hour and minute, no secondhand, and it's very thin. It has a Piaget movement in it, and the thing of it is that these are pretty expensive. Unless you find a pre-owned one, then you might be able to find a deal. This one, you can see how thin this one is, and this was one with a movement by Agenor. Jean-Marc Viderec did it, and this has a dual time, but it's essentially this basic design to it. So you end up finding some pretty good watches, especially during these times when everything else is either non-existent or priced, through the ceiling. Anyway, well, look, let me know what you think, and if you have any of these, I always like to hear your watch stories. This is an opportunity to subscribe if you'd like. Until next time, this is Bill Sanders for Watch Art Side, the art and science of watch collection.